104.7 The Cave, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens in the studio. It is Thursday, time for another edition of Dark Side of the Stream. This week was my pick. It is a new documentary on Hulu. You should definitely watch it. It is called The Jewel Thief, and it tells the story of a young man from Canada who was kind of a nerd, right?
Yeah, good-looking fella.
I mean, it's relative. If you look at the pictures, though, like of him, because
he's super nerdy.
Because again, he documented. I mean, for a guy who stole a lot of money, and we're talking about really millions here, he loved to document himself.
He videotaped everything.
Document himself stealing stuff from gas stations and malls.
Can I just say this dude? First of all, I love him. It was incredible documentary, incredible guy. Like, dude, you gotta love a guy like this.
You gotta love a story. Okay, let's rewind it back a minute. Okay, we're not saying that we love a guy that steals a lot of money. We're not saying that you should go out and be a thief and whatever. It's not like he took all that money and gave it back to the poor or anything. But you do like it, at least we, being the majority of white American males in this country, like it when we see the underdog win. And that is the story of Danny Blanchard out of Canada. He is an underdog. You look at him, his mom was a single mom, poor as hell, living in Omaha, Nebraska, not doing anything. You look at him, he's a nerd, like a big time nerd, but for some reason the kid can talk, and he was friends with everyone. They talked about how he was friends with gangbangers in Omaha.
Everybody,
kid, like nerdy kids, like he was just a cool
very
dude.
Intelligent, very smart guy, man. Like, methodical, smart guy.
But beyond that, I think this story too is also the story of a man who suffers from little man's disease like no other. And what I mean by that is he's constantly trying to prove to everyone and everything that he can that he is the smartest, most intelligent, best looking, more money. And if he feels like you disrespected him in any way, he's going to go after you. Now, I'll tell you, or I'll ask you this, and you know this because you fight all the time. You're in jiu-jitsu. You understand this. And as a fighter, one of the things that I always recognize as growing up was that I was never really scared of the guys that were bigger than me. I was always scared of the little guys that were willing to go up against me, because that in my mind would be what the hell is this guy thinking that he's going to be able to take me down? He either must know something I don't know, or he's so damn crazy, that he's willing to kill me.
Crazy goes far.
And sometimes, man, if you got a little guy like that that's willing to step up to you, your size ain't gonna mean a whole lot. Also UFC. So bottom line is, there are some times where in this documentary he says something like, for example, when he got booked into the city jail and stole the cop car and took off.
Yeah.
He claims that there was a bunch of press out there, and the arresting cop is like,
a bunch of the things, there was like 2 stories for sure. Like,
there's no
stuff. But yeah, dude would get arrested and he
escaped. Guys
steal
left
the car.
He left
the
keys in the damn car. What do you expect?
Bro.
The other thing they caught him on was the bank deal with his. He was talking about how his problem with the banks was that they were always going after his mom.
Well, the banks do. The banks get away with crimes.
They do, but he used the story of having to use ginger ale instead. He didn't have enough money for milk, so he had to use ginger ale for his cereal. And they go immediately to his mom, and his mom's like, no, that never happened.
So there was definitely some tall tales.
Bottom line is, this guy had a chip on his shoulder. Whether you believe his story or other story, he had a chip on his shoulder.
Well, and he started small. He started just stealing from Radio Shack and selling on the street. Then he decided, hey, I can steal it and I can make fake receipts and exchange it for money. Just take it back to the same store I stole it from.
Jay is spilling all the candy, because that's what we're going to talk about next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. .7 The Cave, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio. It is Dark Side of the Stream, episode 147, The Jewel Thief. So, as Jay mentioned, at first, this guy started stealing from gas stations. You know, he'd have his friend like distract him. He'd take a carton of cigarettes, or he'd take candy, or he'd take drinks or whatever, and then they'd take off. Well, eventually that wasn't enough. So they started stealing from Radio Shacks and electronic stores. But then eventually, at a certain point, you have all this stuff. What are you going to do it for? Well, he got the bright idea of stealing a printing machine from a cash machine, and then basically forging receipts,
printing his own receipts,
and
he
then
would take all the
take the
stuff
stuff back. At one point, he said, or at least his buddy said, they were responsible for millions of dollars in merchandise being stolen from that
everything
store.
from one of the Radio Shacks. They went with
they went on Easter Sunday and cleared it out.
Entire store.
Pulled up an entire tractor trailer on an Easter Sunday and cleaned the entire thing out.
Incredible,
which is just unbelievable. And this is in the 80s. Now, again, you didn't have a bunch of kids doing this stuff on the regular level, but it seems to me to think that the reason Radio Shack went under may have been the fact that this guy was stealing so much stuff from their stores, which is unbelievable. But yeah, he continued to do that. Eventually he gets popped, goes into prison for I think a year, maybe 2 years, something like that. Comes out, gets deported back to Canada, where then he would really turn on his game, which will continue next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7. The 104.7 The K, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio. It is Dark Side of the Stream episode 147. One thing I didn't mention before we went into this, and he got arrested and went to Ontario, got deported essentially because he is a Canadian, but he was living in the U.S. at the time, was that he bought his own house, a nice two-car garage at 16 years old, using the funds that he got. Now, after he got out of prison, obviously his mom was like, you can't do this anymore. So he thought he got smarter. And I think at first he said that he was like, his buddy and him got a mortgage together and they were going to split payments. He was buying and selling cars, and that's kind of how he was getting all this money and investment. So he just kept lying to her. As a parent, though, I feel bad for her because you could tell that she hurts from some of the choices he made. But she was also
unconditional love, though.
Again, and that's a choice you have to make as a parent. I mean, at a certain point, she can't be that stupid, right? But instead, she chose to be ignorant of the situation and didn't get involved and just said, you know what, he's going to do what he does, and that's exactly what he did. So he's back in Canada. These guys
comes up with the most genius plan of all time.
Yeah, he sees that a bank's being built. Well, at first he again, this I think goes back to the fact that this guy has an illness, and that is that he is addicted to the idea of stealing, the rush of doing it, because at a certain point, it really didn't matter how much money.
Rush, and I think it's also the I can do this.
Yeah, you can't stop me. Yeah, the little man's disease.
Yeah.
So one day drives by a bank and is like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna steal that. That was probably one of the most interesting pieces of the documentary, is where he rented a room across the street from the bank.
Yeah, for a few months.
And then spent like 6 months to a year watching. If you were in the bank, he was watching you. Got the floor plan.
Well, he bought a hard hat and a vest at the Home Depot.
That's when they were building it. That's the next one. This first one, though, was the beginning of how he did his plan, and that's what I thought was interesting. He would literally lay out like the floor plan and say, this is how this place is. And then at every single step, which direction he would take, how he would disable the security alarms, what those look like, the motion detectors, everything that had to do with his entire process. Amount of steps, time, all this stuff.
He trained for it. Time himself.
Like in time would just do dry runs over and over and over again on his own, because he felt like he couldn't trust anyone to help him, up until he got to the point where he found a bank that was being built. And as Jay was saying, just went into Lowe's, bought a hard hat and a vest, and walked in like he owned the place, and no one questioned him.
Walked in there, and is this where he put the baby monitor inside there so he could
put the baby monitor in the room he was going to rob, so he could watch it all the time.
Took the security cameras and rewired them, right?
Rewired the motion detector so that if you went into the bathroom, you could do a little switch,
secret panel,
it would disable the entire thing. So basically,
months in advance before they built the bank,
as they were building it, he would go in and make these little changes to whatever security they're doing, so that he would essentially build his easy way in and way out. So when the bank opens the night before and they put all that money in, he can go in, unlock everything, and walk right out. no
He
problem.
said
Now,
each ATM machine had
there
what
was
was
like
it?
50K, there was 80,
Yeah,
there was 8.
80K in
Yeah.
each one or something like
And
that.
it inevitably it was like $750,000. So he knew that he needed some help. So he got his cousin to help him drive. And that's essentially how it started. The police came in, everything looked cool because they didn't go in the back. But as soon as they went to the back of the ATM room and they saw those things, they were like, oh my God, we just got hit for almost $1 million. But the thing was, they had no
Zero clue.
idea until they started doing their homework and come to find out this has actually been happening in Winnipeg and Ontario and every other Canadian district and city you could think of.
Dude was crushing it.
And so they started to track this guy down and really do their due diligence and figure out if they had a serial robber. And then while they were doing that, they get a call from Interpol about something completely different. Like this kid just couldn't be stopped. And we'll talk about what else he did internationally next. The Jewel Thief, Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7. One 104.7 The Cave, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio one more time to talk about The Jewel Thief on Hulu. So while the detectives in Canada are trying to figure out what the hell is going on with this bank robbery, as we mentioned, the guy had actually put in a baby monitor in the ATM room. While they start their pre-existing investigation, they notice that some idiot, Danny Blanchard, had actually rented a car in his own name and was parked right by the bank with this van.
Right.
They could put him there. And early on, they were like, whoa, wait a minute, that name. We know that guy.
How do we know this
we know
name?
that dude.
Yeah, the cops that they interviewed were great too. They were funny. Yeah. They were like,
they knew
it was all a big game,
yeah.
And they were like, hey, it was amazing to us as well,
So when he hits that bank that was being built, like we mentioned, he had the baby monitor and he can hear them talking about who they think it's him. And so he calls the cops and says, I'm coming back with guns next time, and just gets him off on a whole nother tangent. So they just stop looking at him, which was brilliant. Well, while they were doing their investigation, they get a call from Interpol. Come to find out, this very, very famous diamond star that supposedly had been worn in the hair of an empress in Vienna, Austria. There, I guess only one in the world exists. And at the time, this kid's on vacation with his girlfriend and her family in Austria. They go into this museum. He sees it and he's like, I have to have it.
I want to come steal it.
Steals it in broad daylight.
Goes to the gift shop, buys a replica one,
and switches them.
Switches it out.
Now that again goes back to the story
move,
about him and how I think he's just aiding the myth, because they were wanting you to believe that he hired a helicopter pilot to fly him over,
parachute
and
in.
He jumped in, and that the cops found a parachute
in the
trash.
One where there was some different stories.
No, it was he literally. That's the thing was so brilliant about what he did. He always took the simplest solution to get to the end.
It was incredible.
Every single decision this guy made, it was always the shortest distance to A and B. And in that, though, he made damn sure that he was covering every centimeter of that distance.
He did a beautiful job.
But that was why he was so smart.
Incredible.
And I mean, again, like that whole thing, eventually they did get the diamond back. And they had to take it back.
He put as a part of the deal.
That was part of his deal.
And he knew that he might have to use it as a bargaining tool later. So he kept it.
And luckily for him, he did. Again, they didn't know about it for 2 weeks. It's that crappy little replica sat in that thing for 2 weeks worth of visitors went to Austria and saw the wrong thing.
Incredible.
So ultimately, this documentary was amazing. I would give it a definite 4.5 stars.
I'm going 5.
I don't know if I give it a perfect.
5 stolen diamonds.
I think we've been giving away too many perfects.
I don't know,
recently.
Man.
I don't know if it's just our picks or they're actually putting out quality stuff.
The story was incredible. The characters involved, the cops and him, they were all hilarious characters. And also it was short.
An hour and a half, baby. That's
one easy one. They didn't stretch it out with any nonsense.
And if Netflix had done it, they probably would have.
They've been listening to us. I feel like
I
the
think-
producers of Netflix have
or
been
at
listening
least
to us.
The Hulu guys.
They
have
stopped
been
cutting. Yeah, they stopped stretching these things out. This was a good one. It was Mike. It was a very solid. Big thank you.
Thank you.
I never probably would have found this because I don't go on Hulu very often.
Thank God
so.
I was unprepared that week and just saw it sitting there
Yeah,
because that's exactly what I did.
That's how magic happens. Buddy.
Sometimes
that's
that
how
is.
magic happens.
That's how I find good records every now and then. So your turn next week. What are we watching?
My pick is gonna be something sight unseen. I haven't seen it. I just found the name. It's a new one about Skinwalker Ranch on Netflix. It just came out a couple weeks ago.
All right, cool. With all the paranormal
Secrets
stuff,
of Skinwalker
we'll
Ranch.
get back
like
to some weird stuff happening in the desert.
Freaky stuff. Some cow mutilations. Sorry, some cow. That's the soundbite right there.
Something you will not hear on Dark Side of the Stream next time. Yeah. Let's. They're completely different things. And while I inform Jay on how to do that off of the air. I am Mike the Intern. This is Jay Stevens reminding you
we watch documentaries
movies, so you don't have to. It's Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7.
Save the cow. Don't molest the cows.